Welcome back to this month's Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology, marketing, brokerage, government, policy, capital, construction, cybersecurity. As always, it's a three-part show. Part one, introductions, what's new in each sector for each Roundtable host. Part two, we focus in and unpack the biggest trends, shifts in the industry. And part three, what does it mean for your business? How to adapt, how to thrive. I'm Andreas, Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, and technology growth strategist for both the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. And joining me this month, none other than Saul, Klein, Realtor, Emeritus, data advocate, Futurist, original real estate evangelist, and member of Realtor.com's original team, Rin. We'll get to that. Saul, nice to see you, my friend.
Yeah, likewise.
Also joining Chris Abel, membership director at the Associated Builders and Contractors here in Connecticut, board member of SMPS, and all things design, build, and engineering. Chris, nice to have you back with us. Rebekah Carlson, founder, CEO, Carlson Integrated, and former president, past president of NICAR Association and brokerage owner. Rebekah, nice to see you as well. Long list, I'm running through it. Maria Kowalik, a resident, all things going green and getting green with green, director of business development at Inland Green Capital provider, and all things C-PACE, member of the Inland Real Estate Group of Companies, and none other than Darren Hayes, our cyber CEO, code detective, professor at Pace University, one of the top 10 forensic cybersecurity specialists nationwide, and Dan Wagner, senior VP at Inland Real Estate Group of Companies, government policy, regulations. Quite a full house. Nice to see everybody. All right. And Anna is on my right, so I'm going to ask Anna, what is going on in your side of the fence? Because everybody's looking for money. It's harder to get right now.
Actually, everyone is looking for money because we haven't been busier. We are just getting requests on a daily basis. People are looking at C-PACE as a solution, as well as should be. A great partner in that capital stack. It is also a way to get energy efficiency projects done. And there are a lot more retrofits coming back, as well as seeing a lot of multifamily new construction lately. So things are hopping in the C-PACE world.
It's interesting. I was on with a call. There was a committee meeting. And they were talking about the 5 L's working against affordable housing: lumber, labor, legal regulations, loans, capital, right, and lots. And I think across this call we have everything. The only L not in there is your IT. But Dan, how are things on your side, the client side? And
the government universe? Okay.
The government universe.
Well, I just wanted to highlight, it was fun to have Lawrence Yoon on not too long ago from the National Association of Realtors, and that worked out really well. But I just got back from 2 conferences. One was the Real Estate Roundtable in Washington, D.C., and then the second one was in Phoenix area for the Institute for Portfolio Alternatives. And the Real Estate Roundtable had the gurus of gurus. You have Jeff DeBoer, who's like the Yoda of commercial real estate. He was there. NAREIT, Steve Wexler, the CEO of NAREIT, that obviously does everything all REITs. And one of the big deals is that a couple of great things. One really great thing that came out of it is that they highlighted with the different governments being led by different groups. So you have now the Republicans are in charge of the House, and we have the Democrats in charge of the Senate. There is not going to be a lot of ability for any change to happen to the 1031 like-kind exchange. So that was the good news. One of the things they did talk about was the possibility of more regulatory impacts by the Biden administration, and that's where the associations are kind of nervous, and they're looking at trying to to fight the regulatory world. One of those areas is the waters of the U.S. that was taken care of during the Trump administration. Now that opened up again, and this is basically where if you're going to develop any land, you're going to have to get the Army Corps of Engineer permit that because they're basically saying a ditch is a navigable waterway. So that's a scary thing, and the industry is going to push back on that. And then the Institute for Portfolio Alternatives are the companies like Inland, where we deal with the alternative investment products. And we were talking about the issues that will be impacting our industry of the financial advisors, broker dealers, that we're trying to keep educating the state regulatory folks. So quite busy, but it's good to be here and be with you. And I know that we had, I think, an unprecedented number of people watch the Lawrence Hune discussion. So I love that. And this is it's really fun to be part of this growing enterprise. Andre, you and Reagan are doing a great job, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. And the growing enterprise is really you guys and our audience. So it's fantastic. And I'm not going to lose that thread on lots and lumber, labor, legal. Saul is double density. Sounds like alternative space and funding. From what I'm hearing, affordable housing, we're going to have an overabundance of affordable housing as far as deliverables coming into the space, at least in my neck of the woods. There's a lot happening. What's going on in California, in your world? We've got ISIX, we've got a lot of changes. CoStar trying to buy into Realtor.com. What's the biggest takeaway for you, Saul?
Well, it's interesting. There's always news, right? So the big news stories, I guess, for me were this conversation around CoStar being interested in Realtor.com, and then Zillow being interested because Zillow and CoStar seem to be competing with one another more on the mortgage market side and having access to first-party data rights. So that's a big conversation that is going on. Another one is this what people are seeing as a win for NAR, and that is, if you're familiar with the Department of Justice and their settlement with the National Association on MLS rules around the clear cooperation policy, where you put your listing, when you put your listing. And then when the new administration came in, the new Department of Justice backing out of that, and a court decision here the other day, last week, that indicates that the Department of Justice really can't just back out like that. Of course, the Department of Justice has got other ways to get at you. So that's like a temporary victory, it looks like, for NAR. And then there's a lot of this conversation around artificial intelligence and Chatgpt, that kind of thing going on. So there's lots to talk about.
I certainly want to come back to that Chatgpt. I'm seeing it everywhere, and I've got some exciting news there as far as what we're doing over at CRECo that I will talk about this show. But the Buyers Brokers Commission going away, line of sight, how listings are handled. We've got regulatory concerns coming for changing regulatory concerns. A lot of uncertainty, it sounds like, a lot of decisions to be made. And Rebekah, the marketing side in Chicago.
Well, things continue to be very, very busy, and it's actually been an exciting season for us to watch new investors start to emerge and to grow their fund platforms, and to look at this time as a great time to raise capital. And I think that it is a great time to raise capital because of where we're at in the cycle. And as buyer and seller expectations are a little out of line right now, hopefully as they come into a little bit more alignment, then it's going to be a good opportunity to buy. And we are seeing a great deal of that. Also, some emergence of technology firms. What we're seeing in the news, for the most part, around marketing is there hasn't been anything in the news besides Chatgpt. So I'm going to leave that to you, Andreas, because that's as much technology as it is marketing.
It's a scary world, and I'm glad Professor Hayes is with us tonight for this one because ChatGPT has been on my mind, along with first-party data agreements and what does 2023 really look like as we have all these regulatory concerns and just shifts, right? Everyone has more time to get very focused in what they're going to do and where they're going to make their money. And how do they go about that? Darren, what's the latest, largest trend in your side of the sector?
So ransomware is still, the big concern for companies. But another concern is coming as well, and that's kind of more state mandates that will right now require any kind of government agencies or contractors not to pay the ransom. And states are thinking about broadening this to other companies. The UK is discussing legislation that would halt any companies from paying a ransom, and there being a disclosure. And kind of there's talks as well in the US about kind of mandating a disclosure for all companies who suffer a ransomware attack and not being forced not to pay the ransom. It's good, but it's not a one size fits all, because what do you do if you're a hospital, and we've seen hospitals hit by ransomware attacks, and you have people who need operations or people's lives need to be saved, and you may be forced to pay a ransom. So it's going to be an interesting one. I attended an IoT conference there recently talking about the importance of IoT evidence more and more in investigations. So thinking about your watch, your Apple Watch or other smartwatch, and how it's monitoring your steps and how that's used today to see if your alibi stands up that you were asleep, or were you running away from a crime scene, but it's all kinds of IoT devices that we use. And we talked about connected cars and the kind of information that we get about, from our connected cars, which is hugely valuable. So it's gives away pretty much nearly as much information as your cell phone does. And then ChatGPT you mentioned, which is of course very, very interesting as well from an academic perspective. So got to more closely monitor what the students submit for essays these days, although that's been an issue for a while because of so-called tutoring services that have been available. I've caught a couple of students using tutoring services in the past, and basically they pay people to actually just do the whole course for you. So that's a concern. But IoT devices are also, coming back to those devices, a concern for security as well, because they lack security controls, unfortunately. Another thing that's been talked about a lot with CISA, which is a government agency devoted to sharing information about cybersecurity threats, but also putting out protocols for government agencies and contractors. There's this more of a push today about secure coding and ensuring that if you use an application that you know the source of all the coding that went into that. Today, a lot of people take shortcuts, application developers. They borrow code, they copy code from other libraries, a lot of shortcuts taken, and there's this new push to know all of the code in your systems rather than think about security as an afterthought.
So, and that's, is it Rise Against the Machines yet? No, we're still a long way from Rise Against the Machines and AI taking over. But speaking of knowing your code and sources and data, I mean, ChatGPT has been everywhere. And I went on and I tried it because some of the people I know in real estate were talking about how you can prepare some great material that you, of course, would have to improve upon for real estate before sending it to a client. And they said, I don't know. This is a little something. But as I understand it, ChatGPT, you don't see the sources. You don't know where the data is coming from. And though it's a tool, it's primarily just giving you an answer based on 2021 or prior data. and it's not really providing factual data. It's Wikipedia instead of Britannica, which, to what you're saying, I mean, that's a scary thought, as more people are kind of turning to this and relying on it. And then I go back and I say, well, wait a minute, how many times do I ask Siri something? Is Chatgpt or something going to come in and take care of this? Is AI here to look through these regulations and start to tell us what makes sense? I can speak for Charlie, which is what we're integrating with CRECo.ai. It's a built for purpose research tool for commercial real estate, where you're going to be able to come in and ask it to do some of the research for you, and you're teaching it, because you have to teach AI. That's what most people don't realize, that you have to teach these things to do things. What's your position on ChatGPT as a professor? Obviously, the essays are a problem, but now there are programs that are going to tell you. Even ChatGPT is going to tell you if it's written by AI. There's a new feature they rolled out today. And what do you think those effects are for the students?
Yeah, I think that we just need to be more vigilant when reviewing these submissions and ensuring that they're writing specifically about a topic. We've got to think about, how to make each of these submissions, more personalized and ways that we can kind of defend against this. I think I have other concerns in the security world about AI more than ChatGPT, and I think I mentioned this before about where we have AI being used to create videos of senior executives that are being put out and putting out
deepfakes. I've seen this on TV.
So deepfakes are not just about photos anymore. They're also about imitating executives and putting out strange messages. And if you think, for example, you take a large position in a company, or you buy some puts and with a bet that the stock will go down, and you put out a video of the CEO of a company saying we're going to miss our earnings targets and things like that, people could really profit from that. So, there's concerns about this. I already know of one case with wire fraud, for example, involving a video very realistic of a senior executive putting in a message.
Well, it's a scary word. I'm hearing uncertainty and a lot of issues all around. We're building properties. We're out there in the market. Saul and Chris, welcome. I think Chris is also just jumping in. I'm gonna move back to the 5 L's, right? So we're labor, lumber, legal, loans, and lots. We have double density, regulation changes. What can we do, Saul, based on what you're seeing? You've been through this a few times. You and I, this group, we've all discussed how it's 10 years in the making for anything. Are we at the tail end of the 10 years as this economy shifts, or are we at the beginning of everything new? And how do we pay attention?
Well, to me, the big issue remains affordability, one way or another. The nails aren't going to get cheaper. The lumber's not going to get cheaper. What we really have to do is look at making the most expensive costs of the land more efficient, and that comes with greater density. So we're seeing pushes in a number of areas around increasing density to bring the housing prices down so that it can be more affordable to more people. And California's recently passed last year some laws that push us towards increasing density. We haven't really seen it yet, but I think we will in time. And you're right; these are cycles, and it takes time for this to take place. And but Darren, I'm real interested in that ChatGPT thing and how it's affecting your students. And right, and does the role of student become more of an editor than a writer? With something exactly like that,
or take it to brokers. I mean, that's a colleague, and I won't name him. He said, no, ask it about the XYZ and see and then send it to your client. Edit it, polish it. That's your blog generation. That's how you promote content on the marketing side now. And Darren, as you pointed out, well, if they can create, there's another AI tool that does video, right? Creates video and images. So at what point are we just here to shepherd the AI. But I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole because we are real estate primarily focused. Outside of real estate, Dan, are you seeing AI bump into your regulations? I mean, in real estate, 1031s?
Well, so the interesting thing that just happened recently, which I think would be interesting to have Darren comment on, is the cryptocurrency. Everybody was all like, "This is the best thing since sliced bread," and we're going to be able to bring this into the real estate world. I'm interested in Darren. What do you hear about that, the cryptocurrency and real estate?
I think cryptocurrency, it kind of ebbs and flows with the market. So I noticed that Bitcoin seems to go up when the market goes up and so forth. And so when there's more confidence in the economy and the S&P 500, for example, the Bitcoin seems to strengthen. I think that it could be used in real estate. We know that it's, unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons for the big push against more ransomware legislation. Russia is definitely using this and Bitcoin to convert into other currencies, to buy whatever they want, and to fund the war in Ukraine. So, that's why there's this big push against ransomware, because that's what Bitcoin is seen to be used for. So, in terms of real estate specifically, Bitcoin has been relatively stable in its price. It's gone up recently, so it's certainly not a phase. I think definitely companies should think about this as an alternative source of currency. Most currency that we use today is virtual anyway, and I thought maybe with what happened with FTX and its downfall, that this would really negatively impact the price of Bitcoin and of the other cryptocurrencies, and it hasn't really. In fact, Bitcoin has gone up in value since the fall of FTX.
Well,
I'm a Midwestern. I'm so conservative. I don't have any investments in that stuff, but I'm 55 and I'm old.
I think you're 55 and you're young, Dan. But what it is it's really, when I look at it, it's really blockchain technology, of which cryptocurrency is a use, of which Bitcoin is a specific use. And so as I look at real estate, I look at, it's really underlying all of this is blockchain technology. And how can blockchain technology be used in real estate? Can it be used in securing titles? Can it be used in fractionalizing ownership? So it's, to me, the Bitcoin is the piece that gets all the attention. And yeah, it's gone from like $19,000 a Bitcoin to $24,000 a Bitcoin recently. But Bitcoin's one of thousands of different types of cryptocurrency, of which the underlying technology is blockchain, that we're going to see, I think, more uses in the real estate space over the next 5 years or so. That's a payment system, really, right? New ways to make payments.
Yeah. Well, so blockchain itself, the immutable ledger of it all, right? It is an incredible idea when you can put it against first property data, right? If we can have this huge immutable ledger for real estate, and guys, just for the record, this is why you buy real estate. It's tangible. It exists. Stay away from Bitcoin.
Amen.
Or car washes, if you can find them. Actually, I say that car washes, daycares, and continued care facilities cover all three sides of the spectrum. You're there. As an immutable ledger, and what's happening there, it makes me think of ISEX and all of these companies making huge moves that are so above real estate operators and the changes in the industry. Saul, I know you've been speaking on a lot. Could you touch a little more on that change and what's happening? Speaking of what's coming.
So I've seen people tokenizing pieces of real estate, right? So you can take a piece of real estate and you can cut it up into 1,000 pieces, and using blockchain technology, and then you can sell fragments of it, which is a new kind of way to syndicate real estate if you think about it. And I think we'll probably see more of that.
Yeah, I think we lost the audio there.
Seeing more of that, which sounds like a regulatory concern coming soon, and actually brings me roundabout to my next point with Anna Maria and marketing. As far as CPACE and going green, being able in a secondary market to take that and quantify it, carbon credits, things of this nature, ESG, and that's what people are talking about. How do we trade those? Companies will be able to trade them and buy them from other companies and people themselves, as I understand it. At least that's what I've heard. Saul, did you miss that, or where did we? Oh, you're back there. Tried to continue your train of thought, but I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, no, I was just relating to fractionalizing ownership using blockchain technology, that there's a real estate application there.
Absolutely. Well, and I bought into some of those apps, and some of them are now bankrupt. Not all, but it's a growing space. Again, buy direct or buy through a DST. Anna Maria, on the CPACE side, on the general going green, it seems everywhere I look, it's all people are talking about. It's all we want to see. Is AI,
and I've heard the notion of that becoming very popular. And actually, I haven't seen any of that in action yet. The closest has been, I've seen the adoption of, there are a couple of companies within our industry who have begun to bring incentives together and, have kind of a warehouse space, to hold all of this information and make it available to property owners. But other than that, as far as any chatbots or anything are concerned, I just have a little concern because we do so much due diligence and we have so many different reliable sources and hopefully they remain reliable for a period of time, that it makes trusting some of the new technology just a little harder and longer to adopt, I think, until there's more proven, like you said, you yourself called it the Wikipedia instead of, anything else. And so who knows? But I think there's a lot of opportunity to explore. When you look at just what's been done in recent years regarding benchmarking of energy types of issues, benchmarking buildings in cities, and taking a look at this through the energy lens, and more places adopting, not just the major cities. And so, but it's been a little bit longer and more tenuous process. So it's taken about 10 years. And so maybe, in the tech world, 10 years equals 5 years, who knows, but, or less. But there are some possibilities that could show some promise for improvement.
Another thing to keep in mind is that that there's a generational aspect to this. Mm-hmm. And that certain generations are more inclined to accept some of these newer technologies than other generations might be. Mm-hmm. And so we have to watch that as we watch things progress. And we can sit here and say, well, I would never use that. And that might very well be the case. But there might be people who were like born with, this embedded and have no problem trusting things that you or I might not trust.
But Saul, on that same conversation, by that same token, the fact is that, do you know that you can trust it? And so they may take it on too easily and trust everything. Hey, let's all trust but verify. So,
and how do you know what it is in an email? Is it
exactly?
Exactly. Saul, go ahead.
There's a lot of that conversation going on right now where some people have this fear that AI might replace them, right? So you see a lot of that conversation. And matter of fact, I went to Chatgpt and I asked it, will artificial intelligence replace people in real estate transactions? Right? Because I've heard people talk, and it'll never replace so it's real interesting to go and ask the AI itself and see what it says. And actually what it says is real early. That was the bottom line response. It's real early yet. And people have to learn how to integrate it into what they're doing. And they really can't say down the road if it's going to replace, the real estate agent, the real estate broker in a real estate transaction.
Nobody's replacing Rebekah, Saul. Nobody's replacing Rebekah.
Yeah, right. We're down the road. That's down the road somewhere.
What do you think of that, Becca?
Yeah. Go ahead, Becca. Years.
Well, I have a lot of different moving parts actually as it relates to this. I was thinking about the benchmarking that Anna Maria was talking about specifically because I have a client who had a LEED certified gold building, like everything amazing, and brought in a tenant that uses too much energy. And now he's going back to the tenant and they're using it has been a migration from office use to medical office use. Very, very electric and heat intensive medical office use for these offices. And what he has discovered actually in his interactions with the municipalities actually makes them very happy because they sell the energy. So they're delighted. They were actually disappointed that he had an energy efficient building. They were very, very upset with him for creating one. So the fact that he's been going through and reviewing all of this data that's intrinsically benchmarking the usage within that building. Now, if I imagine how that applies to blockchain technology, that data would be inherent and intrinsic to the building, and there would be a long-term, someday he may sell the building, for somebody to understand that the catalyst for the energy usage was documented and clear and very indicative of the use that was in that building. I think that would be invaluable moving forward in the future. I think that utilizing blockchain to include that kind of data is important. That being said, he has that data because he has the actual data. He has the actual reports from the actual utilities. He's done analysis on them, on all of this information. Somebody could ask AI at some point a question, and without the benefit of that data, they're just believing. So the trust yet verify point comes in there of where is that underlying data come from. And I think that's always going to be a really important piece within our business. We underwrite. We challenge assumptions. We're in real estate. We take that very, very seriously. I consider the research methodologies of the demographics that I reviewed. Like, are you using median or average? You're probably using median because, average is baloney. There are pieces that we do all the time in our business that require us to analyze where the data came from for every piece of what we do.
And verify in all places. Trust but verify. It's and tolerances and models are just that. We build them. We each build them, and they're slightly different. And they fit our business and what has made us successful.
So they can't get rid of the experts like us, Saul and Dave.
Well, you still have to teach AI
until we're able to give our stamp of approval on things.
Well, as long as the machines don't record us. Go ahead, Tim.
If I could ask another question to Becca. So we just saw yesterday the Fed raised another 25 basis points. What's going on in for example, in downtown Chicago, an office, and compare office of downtown to suburban office? I mean, that's got to be with interest rates going up, and I don't think prices are coming down. So it'd be interesting to hear boots on the ground. What's happening with your clients?
Oh, that is a very good question. My clients are keeping powder dry. So my clients that are investors, no one wants to be the first person to educate the seller. because any seller who's on the market has some misplaced expectations on where the pricing is most likely. So allowing somebody else to be that person to get to educate the seller as to why their property value is not what it was 6 months ago or a year ago, and why that is fluctuating and changing, is not a position that people with ample capital without stringent timelines actually have to do. They don't have to do that educational process as the first person. They're happy to be the second or third, but the first person, not so much. So I'm seeing a lot of powder dry. And I'm trying to think, I went to the real estate forecast here in Chicago, and they were talking about the, downtown office vacancy was still 21% from a lease standpoint. Physical occupancy, we're down, I think, 40%. So there's still a challenge, and certainly in Chicago, guys, we're in the middle of winter. Well, who wants to go to the office in the winter? Who wants to be taking mass transit and driving? It's gross out. So I do think that we'll see some differences in physical occupancy as it gets a little bit warmer outside, but we're a couple months from that. We're really in the throes of winter here. So as occupancy changes, as investors are sniffing around, I do think that the second half of the year, the market is going to be far more active than it is now. And unless a seller has a compelling reason to sell or a buyer has a very, very compelling reason to buy, I think it's going to remain quiet. That being said, they're doing the intelligent thing and working on banking relationships and lending relationships. And that's why Anna Maria is so swamped, because many lenders have publicly announced that they're pulling back. And the ones that haven't, I had a call with one of my very good friends who's a banker a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I can't advertise that we're lending because everybody has heard that we're not pulling back, and I have so much crap on my desk. You wouldn't believe the terrible deals that I'm seeing because we haven't said that we're pulling back. So now everybody's calling him. So that's a piece that the lending community in particular is very busy right now in real time.
And from another perspective, Dan, this morning there was an inland-sponsored call, actually, with CoStar giving the Chicago MSA review and talking specifically about the office markets and how right now, the suburban market in the MSA area here is just really doing well, despite all of the above. And that a lot of that is more the endemic issues with the urban centers, particularly the city of Chicago, and, some of the challenges, both perceived and real, that are taking place.
I'm not sure if it's because of the articles that Andreas is sending out, but on LinkedIn, I'm seeing a lot of ads about lease to office space or subleases. And is that a new trend in marketing on LinkedIn, or has that always been there?
People are utilizing it more.
Okay.
Yeah, the real estate has woken up to LinkedIn as a channel, as a real channel that everyone's here. I think everyone has kind of figured out that is a great channel. But Anna Maria, you brought up some interesting points that we actually spoke about with Dr. Yoon on the last show, in that seeing realized threats and different variables affecting investment. Crime is one. Suburban, I was a fan on the show, investment in suburban areas over downtown cities. The cost may be down now, but hey, everybody loves the suburbs. The whole generation is now in the suburbs because of COVID. That's going to continue. And with all the things tracking us, to Darren's points, including our car, we'll accept our car. The suburbs seem like a smarter place to be off camera, moving around.
Hey, so Andreas, I just have been party to a report put out by Smart Growth America, and a company that I work with, Places Platform, and they've done, it's called Foot Traffic Ahead 2023. And the bottom line with the report is that really the urban areas are not dead, that there are actually price premiums, rental premiums in walkable areas, that COVID slowed things down, but there are still price premiums in those types of areas. And then when you throw the government's push to increase mass transit, reduce people driving in their cars. Here in San Diego, we've got the proposal in San Diego County for a mileage tax. And so the idea that the walkable suburbs, that's one thing, but drivable suburbs, that's something else. And so I guess the bottom line was the old Mark Twain thing, right? The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. And that the idea that the big cities are going to die is not necessarily the case. And we got to watch it very carefully. And we talked about this before, changing use, right? New ways to utilize it, that kind of thing. But the idea that everybody's going to move out in the country and is going to work from home, that it's not necessarily going to happen, right?
But
well,
Saul,
that's yeah. Go ahead.
One of the problems, though, is the very liberal elected officials that get in office. And like in Chicago, there's a mayoral candidate that's talking about reinstating the head tax and reinstating another tax to go on Metro to go downtown. I mean, it's like, if you can think of ways to stop people from coming downtown, those are great ways. And I don't know if that person's going to get elected or not, but there's just some really wackadoodle ideas that are, it's like totally goes against the grain of what you would normally think of how to bring people to your downtown. So that's been very intriguing across the board, especially out in your world of California. That's San Francisco has some interesting stuff they're doing, and it's counterproductive.
Yeah, there was actually a push in San Francisco to tax vacancies. And what a crazy idea, right? Just tax vacancies. And the idea was to get all these buildings that are being built and they're vacant. So if you can throw a tax on it. So yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff, crazy conversations going on right now.
Yeah. Well, the eviction moratoriums, I know people are still interested in that, and rent control. One of the big things that was talked about out in Washington is that the Biden administration is getting a lot of pressure from the progressives to try to do a national rent control. And that is just, obviously terrifying, because every time you do rent control, it destroys the communities. And it's a big deal that people are looking into these things. I don't believe they're going to be able to do regulatory rent control nationwide. But even talking about it just shows a disconnect with investors. I mean, everybody listening to this who might own Six Flat or whatever, I mean, they have to pay the taxes, the extra taxes the government's given them, and they have to pay to fix a broken pipe or whatever it is. But without being able to increase rents, there's not a lot of incentive to go into your own savings account and to fix stuff, and that's a big difficulty.
Well, as housing affordability becomes, or less affordability, then you've got more sentiment towards these ideas of rent control. And so that's, again, we're back to this, why affordability is such an important thing, because these conversations that we know, rent control typically very negative, but you get more sympathy for those conversations when the rents are going up and people can't find places to rent, it's a vicious circle.
And as you know, with building, you get into these progressive building codes where they're trying to add, whole bunches of extra stuff, and that just adds more problems to the building to be able to make something affordable too. So it is, it's not an easy solution, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they're talking about in Chicago is if you are building something new, there's this new trend among the progressive world to ban gas stoves, and to take out your furnace, gas furnace. I just added a natural gas generator to my house, and so it's very intriguing. The electric grid that's being challenged for needing to have electric cars, and then yet they're trying to add more to the electric grids. It's a pretty intriguing discussion.
And actually, that leads to one of the questions that just popped up to this group for thoughts on electric-only proposal for new construction in Chicago and potentially New York State as well. One thing about the Chicago code to understand is that, and I don't know if it's a temporary measure and if it's going to change, or if it can change, and if they can make it, a requirement, but that initially this is going to require that all new construction be electric ready. And this is on residential only, from what I understand. I don't think they're ready to tackle commercial yet. And so that just means that someone can choose to have, gas products within the home, as long as there is the component that will allow it to be phased into electric. And the same thing with roofing. So one of the other parts of the code is roofing, as I understand it, must be to the level of which it can support solar PV systems. And so, and every roof would need to be constructed in that manner. And so, I think, a lot of legislation kind of needs to step back and take a look at what, how it's going to be, actually accomplished, and how viable is that going to be, what it's going to cost, and are people going to be able to do it, and like was previously said, can the grid support it, and aren't we supposed to be adjusting our grids first to be able to handle that kind of activity? So
based on all of this, it sounds like I
questions.
need to change gears and invest in the city, downtown city, where I'm not going to have those added expenses up front of hooking in electric, developing
More
all
questions
the
than answers.
Wow. Always a great conversation as we work around the room here. Thank you, Ted Barnhart, for the question on proposals and construction. As far as the growth in regulations, Saul and Dan here, do you see more of it suburbs versus city? More regulation, more codes, more changes with all of at a micro level, California, Chicago, and so forth, and what you're doing?
It's like, location, right? And in California, the idea, and I think you're going to see more of this, more of a push towards use of mass transit. Maybe in the East, they use mass transit a lot, don't use it out here in the West all that much. So there'll be more of a push towards that, more of a push towards higher density. Like I said, here in San Diego County, they're talking about for a while, we've been talking about a mileage tax, which is actually very regressive, and to force people out of their cars, and into mass transit. And then where are they going to be locating? We look to some of the price premiums on, and this is generational as well. Some of the younger folks actually like walking and would rather only own one car or no cars. And if they only owned one car, then maybe they could afford to buy more real estate. And so that's a generational piece. But here in California, no doubt about it, pushes towards increasing the density on existing properties, forcing people into use of mass transit. And while we have the state on one side saying increase the density of the property, we have the local officials who've got control of the building codes that aren't really crazy about that idea yet. And so you still have roadblocks to increasing density at the local level, where at the state, you've got the state saying you can build at least 2 units on every piece of property, but then at the local level, you got the building codes, and that stops some of it.
Well, there's also a whole bunch of other issues, like just being out in Phoenix on Monday. A big issue that was brought up is water, and the problem of the agriculture world needing to grow the produce that we love here in the Midwest in the winter. The water tables, aquifers are not getting replenished. They just had a ton of water, and their reservoirs are filled up. But especially California, they got to figure out. They had trillions of gallons that went into the ocean, and they want to try to figure out how they can capture that, because you have a development in I think in Arizona that is being stymied because the lack of of long-term water issue is a really big deal. Related to the proposed, we have different people that are highlighting in the questions about what about the efficiency of gas and also electric. I will tell you that in regards to politicians, it seems like a ton of elected officials are excited about wanting to be as green as possible. And I love green, but it's when you start looking at adding to, as Andreas said, to the grid, and to having this extra increase of need for electric, but then they're getting rid of coal-fired power plants, and they want to get rid of nuclear. They want to just rely on wind and solar. That's a difficult. That's a difficult transition, because we're seeing that as a difficulty. People are looking at of changing their entire structure of their condo association and having to put an electric plugs in their parking garages, and that's going to be really expensive. It's pretty interesting to see all the different things that are clicking along. It's a big deal.
Well, you mentioned water, Dan. In California, it's really the water policy. And so I've lived in San Diego since 1964. And when it rains, we always have water that goes to the ocean, because we can't build dams because of the environmentalists. And, we have a joke about the gnat catchers and the flies that we don't want to kill, and the dams, right, create an environmental problem. And so it's not that there's a lack of water, it's that there's a lack of good water policy. And so we end up with shortages, and then people are fighting over the water. Do the agricultural people get it, or does it go to the cities? And it's politics. That's a policy issue.
And in Chicago, and what these guys out west had is that they want to put a big long straw into Lake Michigan and have it go across the country out west. So there's a lot of politics related to that one. So it'll be interesting.
It's a show in of itself when we start to go down that road. Moving water and batteries and the value against cost. What's the net result? What does it really bring us? And time is flying by here. It's already 10 to the hour.
Oh my gosh.
And what does it all mean for a real estate business? Let's go around. What's the one thing you can direct people to do the next 30 days to do better? It sounds like there's a lot of regulation concern, in Becca's earlier point about dry powder. Get to dry powder and let it dry out while we wait and see. Is that how everybody feels on the call, or are we out making deals, or are we waiting for security? And Maria, you're to my right in the screen, so I'm going to go there first.
So basically, my opinion is that, maintenance and energy efficiency projects, things that really need to be done, can't wait typically. And so they are going to get done, and why not do them with the appropriate financing that will help them get done and provide all kinds of other backside benefits to doing that financing. So CPACE is a great tool, especially in these times with non-recourse via the special assessment mechanism and tax lien on property. Depending on corporate structure, it can have tax deductibility benefits as well as off-balance sheet treatment. What's there not to like about up to 100% financing fixed rate long term? And so there is still opportunity to get your projects done, start planning them now for the spring. Inevitably, roofs are going to leak, and you're going to want to put solar on that roof once you fix it. And maybe the HVAC is gone and you have to replace it. And, and so these are all things to start planning for. And you don't have to plan for the CPACE part as much, because once you've decided you're doing these things, then CPACE just falls into place and helps you do it.
Dan, on your side, and CPACE is always going green. We love that.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So for me, I'm always about communicating to your elected official. Find out who your member of Congress is, and talk with them about these very real issues related to our industry. Because so often they make these decisions in a vacuum, and if they can talk to the boots on the ground people that are brokers, investors, developers, I think that's key.
Rebekah?
Well, I have a few takeaways from today, but I would say in the most important is trust and verify when we're putting these deals together. I think that's critical knowledge. And one element that I've noticed with a number of our clients who did spend last year extremely active and are now focusing on retaining that dry powder and really exploring the marketplace. When companies are busy, they may be less likely to tell people all the cool things that they're doing because they're too busy. So now is actually a really good time, if you're not busy, to start planning out and developing some processes for sharing what you're doing next time as if the end of this year is a little bit busier. You're still not going to have time to say, oh my gosh, we're closing transactions. Oh my gosh, we've done this great deal. We're doing this redevelopment. We've just done this build out in this tenant space. Oh, wow, this great tenant is coming to our shopping center. All of those things are elements that people actually care about and want to know. People want to know what's going on with all of our businesses. And this is like the shoemaker's children have no shoes. Like, I keep forgetting to tell anybody all the good things that's going on in my business because I just get busy. So I was just pontificating a bit, and I just thought we should be telling everybody all the cool things we're doing. And in order to do that, we might need a little bit of process behind it and a little bit of a plan to do it.
Absolutely. And marketing mavens are there to help, just not.
Oh my gosh, anytime. Of course.
So inland for CPACE for financing. Dan is always there working the White House. I'll say it bluntly, to keep us in our 1031 exchanges. Which, by the way, it's probably a great time at 10,000 people turning 65 every day to be considering exchanges, knowing about exchanges. If you don't, looking at DSTs.
I love you.
Wondering what's going to happen. What's going to happen to your life savings if you put it in Bitcoin? Although, Darren, I will have to say one thing about ransomware. Last I heard, the FBI has been seizing back all this money. So if we stop paying the ransomware, and we, not me, whomever, then how do you track them and how do you stop it? But that may not be your one thing. What is your big one thing to the world today for the next 30 days?
Well, I would just, if you're a publicly traded company, keep an eye on this new SEC proposed legislation. 20 years since the introduction of Sarbanes-Oxley, where you were required to have a member of your board understand financials and be able to help the rest of the board understand financials. Now there's a proposed mandate to include somebody with expertise in cybersecurity and cyber risk, because it is a very important business decision. I mean, take, for example, there are people who are paying for Palantir, a threat intelligence tool, maybe $1 to $5 million a year to use their tool, or endpoint detection and response, which is about $1 million. But if you don't have some of these tools, you may end up spending a lot more money after a data breach. So I think in theory, what the SEC is proposing is important. Speaking with some other people, sometimes you need to wait until somebody dies before a board seat opens, but you've got to have these people who understand cybersecurity risks on your board, at least one person who can make sure that there's proper oversight.
Well, so and unpacking that just a bit, the proper oversight, the de facto data privacy person, is the CEO now. So even if you're not thinking about it, you may be liable for it depending on who you're contacting, as I understand it. And that's along this line. It's just because you're unaware doesn't mean you're not liable. So you have to be aware. Is I think the point you're striving at. No matter the size, though, I'm not spending $1 million on my cybersecurity. ISEX might be. Saul, on your side, what's the biggest takeaway you can give to the
So
people tuning in every month?
the reason I got into the real estate business in 1977 was because of the opportunity. And the opportunity is always there, and it's there now. You have to look for it. The last 12 years kind of have spoiled folks a little bit, but this is when there's great opportunity. So take advantage of it, find it, make it work for you. Come by our car wash if you have time, and we'll be glad to help you.
It's always summer at Saul's car wash, and your car can always get cleaner. And as far as places, you mentioned it briefly. It's the first time you brought it up by name on the show. They just launched their public platform. It's growing, and walk scores, I see it everywhere. We'll have to take a look and talk more on that. Overall, I want to thank our audience. I want to thank our producer, Regan, who's back there, Mr. Mendoza, for tuning in every month. Without all of you, none of this is possible. And thank you to each of my co-hosts. What a great event. For our audience, download our show anywhere you get your audio, Apple Podcasts, Alexa, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. The list goes on. Or just simply ask your device to tune into the CRECo.ai Roundtable. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a host of great content, including past sector interviews. As Saul and everyone mentioned, the show is exploding worldwide, and we could not ask for a better audience than the one we have coming in asking questions. Thank you again for tuning into this month. Come see us next month, and we've got an incredible lineup of sector interviews coming soon. Thanks, everyone.